So for those of you that are new here, I'm Erica and my partner Jason, and we try to bring content to our community every month to help people learn about RV park management and operations. And we're sharing as we're going, so you guys get real-time updates on things we're learning as well. And then the other thing I would say is, I don't know, Jason, I kind of lost my track
So,
here.
here's the thing about this month. This is why I said definitely should be recording this because there's gold in this. So
Mhm.
we've always heard you can't fix what you can't track. But more importantly, think of it this way, and this is going to be, I want you guys to think about this for this entire presentation is, how many of you guys have ever tried to drive your car just using your rearview mirror? I would probably guess it'd be none of you because you'd probably crash before you made it the first mile. So when you go into any business, whether it's an RV park, any business in the world, if you're always basing your next month's decision based on last month's actuals and last month's performance, and last month's feedback, it would be like driving your car only watching your rearview mirror. So the whole purpose and outcome we want for you guys out of this presentation is there is a series, and it's not a big group. There's a series of things you should always be following, forward looking to say, okay, where do I need to make pivots in my operation? Where do I need to make pivots in my marketing? Where do I need to make pivots in my customer relations? So that you don't wait to the end of the month and go, oh, wow, well, that wasn't the revenue I was expected. Now what do I do? So that's the key takeaway I want you guys to take away from this one is it's not just about, we can't fix it, we don't measure it, but it's about if we don't measure the right thing, we can't make the right steering corrections at the right time. All our decisions become too late, and none of us want that.
Yeah, that's a good
Like,
summary.
is
And I
that kind
would,
of what you're looking for?
well, I was going to add too that we prefer this as interactive, so the best conversations happen when you guys are involved. So come off mute, ask us questions, interrupt us if you have any clarifying points, and we'll do our best to help with that. And as you can see, that when one of us is needing a leg up, the other fills the percentage. So Jason and I balance each other out, and that's what he said is exactly what needed to be said. So we'll go into this. So what we're going to look at is we're going to look at the metrics that predict operator health. So it's what do you look at today that is a projection of where you're going to be at in the future. Um, we'll take a brief discussion on trailing indicators and how even though they're great to look at your past performance and they can be used for any kind of performa and kind of giving you that history of what's happened, if you're relying on them solely, they can give you misleading information. And then how do you track it to make sure that you're closing the gaps quickly? So what we've seen in this space and those that have been in this space is, I don't know how many of you have reached out to a park owner and you're like, can you have your financials? Basic financials. And sometimes they're good and sometimes they're not. And I don't know about you guys, but like even in this last week and a half, I've talked to at least 3 or 4 park owners that are struggling operationally and they're not looking at the future data. So they don't understand why they're not getting bookings. They don't understand what's going on with their future forecasts. They're struggling to maintain enough cash and to be able to pay the bills, and they're looking to exit quickly because they got into an asset that they don't know how to manage it. And what's really happening is that if you're looking historically, your trouble could have started weeks ago and you didn't realize it. So you have to balance between historics and future. And then there's also things that happen where are you optimizing your labor correctly? Like if you do transient parks like we do, your labor fluctuates. Well, maybe you're keeping steady labor. So for us in Georgia, we keep our labor all year round. Now we fluctuate the work campers we bring in, but we have a core staff that we have there. We have a cleaner, assistant manager, and a manager because we have the restaurant to run. So you may decide to operate that way based on how your park needs are, or you could decide that you have a slower season, so you need to forward project your revenue to adjust your staffing accordingly. Um, and then good months could be masking what's really a cash flow issue. Jason loves metrics. Ask him how much he's been diving in. So I'll let you kind of take some of these, Jason, as you've been really digging into the numbers in the last couple weeks.
Yeah, and just let me tell you guys, this isn't the end all be all of analysis that you can have. We just wanted to make it simple and easy. And if you have these top six part of your weekly review. I don't know how you guys handle your parks. We do L10, so we follow the entrepreneur operating system. So we have a weekly meeting with our manager, and then we have a weekly meeting with the team. And our team, we deep dive into these numbers, and then with our manager, we go, okay, here's what we know based on the data. Here's the steering corrections you want to make. Or we even ask the park manager, what are you seeing? Because they're the front line, right? They got the bird's eye view. They know exactly what's going on day to day, and we're just getting a glimpse of it just from what we can log into electronically. Which brings me to another point. You guys have to work with a good um, booking software system. There's tons of them out there. The only one I can say I don't like because I've used it firsthand is CampSpot. All the others I cannot comment on. The one I'm currently using is NewBook. I love it. But any one of these software programs has this level of um, metrics that you can follow. How they work in the other programs, I can't tell you. I can only tell you how they work in NewBook. And for us, they work beautifully. Um,
Well, and
Erica,
maybe we'll add on to that. We're in talks with New Book to have them on a future webinar. So we'll give you guys an opportunity to speak to our rep and ask questions. So look for that. But one of the things that we looked at was how do we get this reporting? And let me be honest, these no matter which booking system or property management system you're picking in this space, all of them are going to have gaps. And it's up to you to spend the time in it to figure out how do you fill those gaps to get you the information you need. So for us, I have spent the time with our team to make sure the backend systems are mapped correctly and revenues reporting correctly and in a manner that I want it set up. So I have a very specific way that I itemize our general ledger accounts, how I want to see cash reported, at what detail I want it reported, so that as we're going into this type of data mining, it's easier for us to segment out how our bookings are doing. An example of that is I like to see how the performance of our backend sites do compared to our pull-through sites. So because they're two different rate structures often in parks or things like that. So it all comes down to your backend systems and how they're set up. And then that turns into how do you leverage this data going forward? Anything you
yeah,
add?
so no, that's absolutely perfect, Erica. And I'm not going to deep dive in each of these because we have future slides to deep dive into these, but RevPass, it's not only number one because it comes first in our list, but it's also number one because it's probably your biggest indicator of how each site is doing, right? It's not just about how many sites you have occupied, it's about how much each site is bringing in revenue. So the efficiency of that. So we'll go into detail on that. Your forward booking pace. So if you have a really good booking software, they're keeping track of your actuals from as far back in your past as you've been able to load into it, and they can predict future bookings just based on past performance. And again, that's no different than looking at a stock and looking at past performance. It doesn't mean it's going to perform that way going forward, but at least you have a picture of what you should be driving towards. And if you're not getting there, you can start asking the questions why. Why am I not doing as well as I did last year? And if you are doing as well as you did last year, why aren't you doing better? So those are the questions you can ask with that. Cancellation rate. You need to know why people are canceling and, first of all, if they're canceling and then why, because that might be something you have to fix in your system.
Or
Labor is,
processes, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So when I say system, that there's something in the process flow, whether it's um, the way they book, um, they read a rule that they didn't understand when they first booked, and after they read it, they decided they don't want to stay anymore. It could be a gambit of reasons, but you don't know it's a problem until you see, that graph that says, "Oh, we got a spike in cancellations. We need to look into that." And then labor is a cost of revenue, right? I mean, we're in the business to make money, so if our labor outpaces our revenue, we've got a problem in the long run. And then length of stay trend. Um, that one's kind of interesting too because you want to know how popular sites are and how popular they are for a given amount of time. But there's even another interesting one on top of this, and that's how far in advance somebody is booking.
Mhm.
So if your advertising is working the way it should, you should have people booking out way longer. I'll give you an example. We have a park last summer, people were booking out 10 days in advance. This summer, we concentrated in the off season on marketing after the first of the year, and people are now booking 30 days out.
Mhm.
Well, you definitely want 30-day out bookings more than you want 10-day out bookings because you can start to predict things better, make sure staff is ready, and then you know what holes you have to fill in your advertising to fill up the rest of those spots. And then, of course, cash runway. How much operating reserves do you have, and are you maintaining an operating reserve process? And if you are, this is going to keep you on track with that.
And I will say that these aren't the only six things that you're tracking, but for us,
Yeah.
these are the six things that we're focusing on each week, along with other items. So like Jason said, with the average night's length of stay trend, it also depends on your park because our one of our parks is just due to where it's located. We have a 1 night minimum at stay. And that's on all of the short-term rental units, which is unusual for a short-term rental market, but it's because that's our highest conversion because people are coming in for 1 night, they go out to the swamp, they come back for 1 night. So unless we offer that 1 night, we're going to lose a lot of that revenue. So it's a demand in the market that you need to understand what's happening in your markets. So RevPAS, RevPAR, if you're in multifamily, it's basically what we're looking at is where is our occupancy percentage line. So the you want to understand that if you're filling up your park, how much occupancy are you filling at, and then what's your average nightly rate in that occupancy? Because, for example, and I'll give it into the cabins because it's like a little bit easier of an example to talk about. We have 5 cabins. 3 of those cabins are 100% booked out every weekend. And it's because there's high demand on those cabins. So it's actually harder on my staff to have them 100% booked out because we're constantly turning them. We probably do what 3 turns a week on every single cabin we have. So we have to
Yeah.
have a housekeeper that's constantly turning these over. Now it doesn't work the same for RVs, but the concept is the same. So then you say, okay, is it better for me to raise rates so that I get less turns? It's less wear and tear on my materials. So the bedding, the towels, my staff, but I'm getting a lower occupancy with a higher return for that occupancy. So this is the lever where you're playing in between those and you're figuring out where do you keep your occupancy for the right amount of return for your market. So you need to do analytics and figure out what is the right thing for your market. But it also helps you track the seasonality. So right now we're starting to head into the slow season at one park and the busy season at another park. So it helps us understand those P&L shifts and that trends. And then the trajectory of it matters more than anything. And how that comes to fruition is, for example, we keep data, we've ported it over for the last 2 years at both of our parks from the prior booking systems. And what we look at is as a trend overall is from when we took over, is our per night cost going up versus how it was in the past? And that's a good indicating trend for us. And so when we're looking at it at the Georgia Park, we know that the prior manager gave a lot of discounts to fill up the park. So she was selling them 30% off a RV site just to get the pads filled, but not making any money on the park, breaking basically even, having high electrical spikes, but her occupancy looked good, but her RevPAR is very low, right? So now
Yeah.
we're working on moving the RevPAS up because we want to have that less occupancy be what we're charging more for site. So our revenue is up, but our occupancy is down.
And here's another example. So we also utilized this when we had a group come in that booked the park that came in April,
Mhm.
and we had to honor it because it was a discount that was offered before we took ownership. Well, because we understood this Rev Pass, we realized that them coming in at a deep discount, and even the person who ran the event got their site for free for 7 days. Our per night rate was discounted considerably to the point that we did not make any money, even though the park was full that weekend.
Yep.
So that tells you that in this particular case, that discount was too deep. that we didn't make any money, so they win, we lost. A good, scenario is they win, we win, right? So you give them enough of a discount where they feel like, okay, I'm part of a group, I'm getting a discount because I'm coming with this group. But then the business who's providing all the services, the electrical, the bathrooms, the restaurant, all that, they're making something too. And in this case, we did not make money, and this data proved it.
And it's also an indicator for where you need to start marketing. So if you set a floor and you start trending below that floor of your per night, you know that you're missing out on bookings and you need to start kicking your butt into gear with that future looking to start getting that marketing out to target those. So that's primarily the future one with the PACE report that comes out, but we'll talk about trailing versus leading indicators and what's the difference between the two of them. Like if you're out there evaluating park, like I know you guys are right now, you're looking at monthly revenue, occupancy numbers, guest reviews, P&L statements, profits, right? Those are all lagging indicators of how a park's going to perform. It doesn't have any indication. It can give indicators of how it will perform in the future, but unless you're monitoring these leading indicators, how do you have the confidence to know that you're going to deliver what you said you're going to deliver? So you think about it when you're doing all this historical looks, you set together projections, and it's your budget for the next year. It's your underwriting that you're presenting to investors to say that here's what I'm going to do and here's how I'm going to hit these numbers. The leading indicators help you predict the future into whether you're going to be able to meet those commitments that you did in your budget and to those investors. So we look at a PACE report for up to 90 days in the future. What that is and this all depends on your booking software, but for what us it does is it takes a look at where are we at today? How many reservations have we gotten? What is our cadence of reservations? Like how early are people booking from where they arrive and how is that trending? And here's what I expect to recover in revenue. And if you're using a booking software like we are, it does tend to be more on the conservative side, which is actually a good thing. We like it. So you can use that and they'll include that report. And it's been something that we've really appreciated about New Book. It has a pretty good pace report. Um, anything on that, Jason?
No, again, this is a great example of using your rearview mirror and using your windshield,
Yeah.
which will get you, to your destination a lot safer. So, and I will tell you, so Erica talked about, those items, those lagging items is what you look for when you're underwriting. But then when she's underwriting and understanding where the park can go, she's also asking for some of these leading indicators. She's asking, "Hey, can I see your booking report for the next 6 months? Can I, you know, can I see how much labor you have? How long are these people staying on average, and how far in advance are they booking? And even the question of how many return guests you guys have, because that's a pretty good indicator of how popular the park is if you got a lot of return guests. And
Mhm.
if you don't, then you go, okay, well, that's actually potentially upside because now I've got a list of however many hundreds of people that have stayed in that park in the past. And then now I can re-engage them in some kind of email campaign that says, hey, I'd love to bring you back.
Yeah.
So, so these are important for day-to-day operations, but it's also important in your underwriting to also see, well, if I were to join this person's team and not buy the property, what am I looking at for the next 3, 6, 9 months?
And one of those that I'm just gonna jump down to it because it's gonna pop out really quickly is the labor percentage of revenue. If you're looking at parks, this is a really good indicator to tell if they're understaffed or overstaffed. So if you look at their revenue and compare to how much their weekly labor cost is, you can do an adjustment on that, and then you should be projecting it at the right range for your future performa. And there was a couple parks that I've looked at in the last couple weeks. Like one of them is 132 pads, but it's running at a 41% expense ratio, and I can tell that it's understaffed. And a transient park with 130 pads should not be at a 41% expense ratio. They're cutting meat somewhere. So you have to assume that as you're taking over a park like that, that you're going to increase your labor or some other costs in that. And you want to make sure that you're careful about planning for that. But it also works in your current park as you're measuring your metrics to make sure that you're performing your labor to the rate of revenue that you're bringing in. When we talk about cancellation trends, one of the things that we found, and it can be an indicator too, to do you need to change policy? And what we found is for large groups that were being booked, they weren't taking deposits on those. And so people had no problem canceling because our cancellation policy is pretty strict. We charge $40 if you book and you pay, you're going to lose $40 no matter when you cancel. If it's 72 hours before you arrive, then you lose 100% of everything you've put in. Well, we had the group that Jason was talking about, they were allowed to 100% book out the entire park and no down payments, and not even up to a week before they came in. And this is an agreement again from the prior owners. So what happened is in the past, they had filled out those things and had a verbal agreement and had filled up the park. Well, come this last event, they didn't. We had 5 cancellations the day before they showed up with no payments on record. So our cancellation rate spiked that week because they didn't pay. So we've set now a new standard with them and with all groups is that we have to take some sort of deposit. The deposit must cancel the cancellation rate, so it has to be at least $40. And most times we require 100% payment at the time of booking. So it's how do you measure and protect yourself, or just even yourselves, making sure that you're understanding why guests are canceling. And it's really easy for them to cancel. I mean, Jason will tell you, what was that guy hung up on you? We had one of our park
Yeah.
managers we had to let go. He was notorious. We found out he was taking bookings without taking any payments. And some guy no-showed. Like we were trying to get a hold of this guy. He no-showed on a cabin. Well, our cabins are 100% booked every weekend. Remember that. So some guy no-showed and he laughed at us when we said, "Are you coming?" And he goes, "No, and you don't have my card on file, so good luck. Bye." You know,
He was right.
he was right. But it helps though when you're monitoring this, you can get ahead of those things and make sure that you have your team trained to do the right things and you're catching that what your staff is working on.
Yeah. And well, the other downside about the scenario Erica just told you, it wasn't as bad about the cancellations because again, some of those were our cabins. The problem was they canceled the day before they showed up. So we couldn't get them rebooked right away. And we had been turning people away for the 4 weeks prior to that because they told us, oh, we're going to book your whole park.
Yeah,
So we were turning people with credit cards saying, I want to stay there during that week. Please take my card. And we have to say, sorry, all sites are booked. And then the day before they arrive, we get all these cancellations. So it was a big lessons learned. But
yeah.
again, it was one of those things that it was out of our control because it was already promised before we had
Right.
taken ownership.
A good example of why these things are important to track. And then the length of stay direction, it just gives you an indicator on how your park's performing. One of the things we do that we've shared is we do a hybrid model. So we like to have some seasonal or monthlies people that stay for maybe 3 to 6 months at a time. And then we have people that stay shorter periods of time, up to one night each. So that length of stay direction just kind of gives you a signal. So for us, what it works well on is we have a certain part of the park where we tend to put long-termers. We can see that we have more consistent revenue there. We can see that we have more bookings that are coming in there and that their length of stay direction is increasing year over year because they're filling that side of the park. But then, like I said, for the transient side, you can use it as a metric and it's good to see how your guest behavior is, but you still need to market according to the market and what it's willing to take on. So this is a scenario just to kind of give you the summary of it. So you're having a great month. So let's just say you're coming in and it's May and you're looking at 91% occupancy and your revenue is up 8% year over year. And this is the kickoff of your season. And it's really easy to go in and say, this is awesome. Now, if you are running your RevPAS or your PACE reports or any of that, you would have already noticed that your end of summer is lagging. So what happens is if you're only looking at where your revenue is, where your occupancy is today, you're not going to notice things that are going to come up in the future. So you can see that they had a high cancellation rate. If that doesn't get caught, right, the occupancy go down but it's not noticed because there's no tracking. And then you start seeing occupancy dip even more. And what happens when occupancy dips even more? How many of you guys have seen those fire sales where people are going, hey, last minute discount, get in here, we're going to give you 30% off. They're struggling because they haven't managed a decline that was coming that they could have signaled for months ahead of time.
And that's just why that doesn't work.
Once you discount, you're always going to discount.
Yeah.
And then occupancy kept dipping, and now it's too late to react. And now you're suddenly in a crisis mode because you don't have enough revenue that came in over those months to start paying the bills, and you start having a gap to budget. So that's just a story of what could happen. And honestly, what we do see does happen to people in the industry. So, how do we close that gap? Jason, how do we close the gap?
That is a great question. And I would love to hear other people's input as we're going in on this. And again, what most operators track. So again, we just want to keep that in the forefront. And this is normal. We've all been guilty. Even I've been guilty of this. Hey, how did we do last month? Instead of, how are we on track for the next 3 months, right? So in order to maintain that, we actually look at this RevPass weekly. We run the report every Monday, and then we go over it on two different occasions. Like I said, one with the management team, and then one with the on-site manager. Um, both of them with different outcomes, right? And then and so, of course, you're missing rate compression signals. So what that's basically saying is you already know your bookings for the next few months. You have those in there, right? And then you have on top of that is what the booking software thinks your bookings for the next 3 months should be on top of that. So now you've got a gap that you got to fill that says, okay, I know I got this potential, and even the booking software says I have this potential. So now what do I need to do to get there? Is it a marketing campaign? Is it a Facebook campaign? Is it a email campaign? Is it a Google Ads campaign? Those are the things that you want to run through and make sure you understand. And then, annual occupancy. Again, occupancy is great, but if you're not making money in your occupancy, or if you're overtaxing your staff and overtaxing your resources, it's not really a good thing, right? So I'll give you an example. If you offer these big discounts to all these big rigs that come in, and these big rigs, and electricity is included with their 3 4 night stay, and these big rigs have three ACs on them, and they're burning about $35 a day just in electricity alone, that discounted site no longer looks so good to you and your books. So that's why just occupancy alone isn't your indicator. So again, I kind of talked about this with the RevPass, your booking pace report 90 days out, showing, okay, here are my actuals, here's what my potential, and then now we can come up with a plan on how to get there. And I'm very competitive, so I'm always going to try to outbeat the pace report. So if the pace report says I can do another 20K, I'm going to do another 25. And hell, if I can do 25, I might as well do 30. And then of course your weekly labor to revenue, and this is important when you have events come up. Like for example, when you have these big groups come out, and you're going to have to spike your staff for a little bit. So all hands on deck during this event, even though it might be not be someone's work day, or like we have a big Labor Day event over the weekend on
We
both
have
of our
two of them.
parks.
Yeah.
Yeah, where we have music and food, and in one park we have, beer on tap, and then we have the pool at one park, and we have a water slide at the other park, and we have music at one park, and we've got food trucks at the other. But so when it's all said and done, we want to make sure that once we close the books on that weekend, how did that compare to the amount of labor we threw at it? Did we throw the right amount of people? Too much, too little? If you throw too little, you risk burning out the staff, and they're going to quit before 4th of July because they know they're just going to repeat Memorial Day. So these are good things to have well ahead of time, right? So all the data we glean from this weekend, and we're going to use to plan our 4th of July weekend. Everything we get from 4th of July, we're going to plan for Memorial Day, or for Labor Day weekend, so on, etc. Anything you want to add to that, Erica?
I'd say just for labor, it goes both ways. So you have overstaffing and the cost of that. You also have understaffing and the cost of that. And one of the things that Jason and I have found with understaffing when we've walked parks that are understaffed is the morale of your staff is very, very fragile, and they're walking out, right? So it's a
And they're
fine
convincing
balance.
others to walk out.
Yes, and they're convincing others to walk out, and they're not very quiet about it. If you guys, when you start running campgrounds, if you haven't, they're the gossip kingdom of the world. People love to talk.
good or bad.
Something is going on in your park. Everybody knows about it. And so even your workers, they're all talking to each other, they're talking to the guests. And so these are the things that we monitor to kind of stay on top of that and make sure that we're aware of the situation our staff is at. And I would say we tend to be a little more conservative on the staffing side of it and put more budget into that to make sure that the guest experience isn't there, which is right here, the guest reviews. And it's a balance and we're within our numbers and we budget for it. But your net promoter score, for those that don't know what NPS is, and we're monitoring that all the time and that reputation, because once you get that reputation, it takes a while to get that back. And we've had that very early on. In Georgia, we were starting to get a reputation that we're coming into corporate like. And it wasn't because we're coming into corporate and they're saying we're changing stuff. It was just a couple unhappy workers that were spreading gossip throughout the community, and it's a small community. So it's how do you stay ahead of those things and understand it and making sure that you're monitoring everything in real time to be able to keep on top of it.
And keep in mind, especially with guest reviews, it's coming at you from multiple angles, right? So you've got your booking software where Erica has it set up that she sends out a text when they check out,
Mhm.
to see how their stay was. So that's one area where we have a net promoter score. Then the next is your Google reviews, right? So everything is based on your Google reviews because everything comes in and out of Google, right? So you always want to stay on top of those Google reviews. And then you've got some of the big players in the industry. You've got a company called Dirt, DYRT, and what is it? Campodium? Is that another one?
Compendium,
Campendium. So those are big ones that
Hip,
campers use
Hip
to
Camp,
talk about
RV Life,
parks. Yeah, RV Life's another big
TripAdvisor,
one.
Yelp.
Yeah, yeah. Yelp, yes, but I've noticed that if you're lagging on, RV Life and Camponium and Dirt, those will hurt you more than Yelp. But then there's also, Booking.com, right? I mean, they've got a
Mhm.
big following. And for us, we get a lot of Europeans on our Georgia park. And so Europeans love Booking.com. It's a European company. So a lot of our bookings come through there. So we've got to always stay on top of that and maintain that. So reputation as management is huge because A, it's going to affect your revenue, and B, it's going to affect your ability to book in the future. So it'll affect your current revenue and it'll affect your future revenue. The problem is most operators don't notice it until they're 3 months in and they've lost 3 months of revenue when you could have found this on month one. And then, of course, always compare last year to this year, not just because you want to do as well, but you want to exceed it.
So while we're talking about the exciting world of metrics, 'cause this is what we love to live in, we just thought we'd put together just like a quick 1 month plan on how do you do this and how do you get it in there. Guys, AI is your friend. Claude, I use Claude to do a lot of this and to put it together, to make it pretty, because you're pulling from multiple systems. You're going to pull out of your property management system. You're going to pull out of QuickBooks. You're going to pull out of, if you do a point of sale system and it's not integrated, you still need metrics out of there. And then you can dump in anything. We happen to use a company to do our marketing, and so we get a marketing dashboard as well that we throw in there to just kind of monitor the marketing trends as well, which we didn't really talk about that, but it is something we should talk about too. Because like I said, this isn't meant to be all encompassing of everything that you're tracking. In addition to this, we have a whole marketing segment where we watch the marketing numbers. So in that side of things, we're tracking very real time. How are we rating in SEO? Meaning, how are we ranking in findability? How are we ranking in findability on AI as well as Google searches? We also track our reputation management through that. And then we also track like we do paid ads. So we do our paid per click ad and how are our ads performing? How many reservations are we getting out of our ad spend? All things that we stay on top of and monitor weekly. But if you were to get started today, we recommend getting your RevPass under control, looking at your cancellations, and looking at your future pacing reports of how your park is set to perform. And an independent evaluation is typically better. So if you have a system that can help you with it, and it does reduce the time rather than trying to create these. And that's the pros and cons that you should look at when you're looking at your property management software. Especially when you're on a transient park, I would say it's pretty important. And then put in your systems, thresholds, and then start reviewing it. Like Jason said, we use the entrepreneurial operating system. So every week we meet with our team, we look at these, we take action items, we go after what we need to go after. And if you follow our pages, you'll see very targeted ads based on what we're seeing in the numbers for the future.
One thing that's interesting, Erica, nobody's asked the question I thought they would ask is, what is the percent of labor compared to revenue you should be looking for? So I figured people would be curious, but no one asked.
Jason, I'm curious as to labor in general. Like, what are you guys? And first of all, you guys must do so much. I can tell you guys have a huge system, a huge business. Like, you guys do a lot. What do you look for with labor? What is labor on a transient? It seems like you guys have a mix of transient and long stay.
Yeah, so good question, Nico, is just gonna go back up. With labor, what I've seen is that generally a park should have between 18 to 24% of revenue reserved for labor. Now, right now, it's going to depend on where you're at. So, for example, our park in Georgia, we're starting to enter the slow season. So we're starting to see higher labor because we're choosing not to let go of those people during the slow season because we retain the talent. So
And we've
we'll,
got projects we want to work on over the summer.
right, so we're retaining them for CapEx projects and stuff. So we'll have a higher labor cost that is going to trend around 50%, versus what should normally be likely below 35%. Make sense?
Yeah. And what type are you, so is it, I can't imagine. Like, so I'm new to this. I
Yeah.
obviously just
So
came up with
I know where your question's going, Nico. So what is the mix of resources, right? And both parks are different because the Texas park has a pool that's open to the public. So we've got a minimum of 6 lifeguards on staff. So the pool's open 6 days a week. So you got six lifeguards making 12 to $14 an hour. And then you got front desk staff. You got the people, you know, selling stuff in the camp store, selling pool passes, selling parking passes, just the day-to-day operations. And then you got the park manager and the assistant park manager. And then you got your maintenance guy. Now, it so happens at that park, our maintenance guy is a work camper. And so, he works enough hours to pay for a site, and then that's a wash. So that's that
You have
park.
a paid one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you go to the Georgia park and you have a park manager and assistant park manager, but because we have a restaurant and bar that's open, bar's open 6 days a week, the restaurant's open 3 days a week, we have to have that overlap where we need both of them all year long. Whereas the Texas park, we only bring in the assistant manager for the peak season.
Yeah. So
Wow.
And
we,
then
And who manages like the different, like if you have so many like lifeguards, I guess do you guys do all that? Are you like the head of
now park,
every? Okay.
park
park,
manager.
the park manager reports to us, everybody else reports to the park manager. So part of our weekly L10 is to say, okay, how are things going with resources? Do you have any issues? Do you have any things you want to brag about? Do you have enough resources? That question comes up every week.
And do
So
you
that,
do staffing? Like do you put out the job posts and then like
Yeah.
vet and
yeah,
hire everybody?
yeah.
So
So
not us directly, but we do work with the park manager on it. So Jason, do you mind if I step in and take this
yeah,
one
go for
over?
it. Yep.
So what we do is an annual planning session. So just to give you an idea, and you're right, we are running two different staffing models, and the larger you grow, the more we have to do this. Our Georgia park, we have 6 team members right now, and on our Texas park, we just finished hiring and we have 13 people there.
In the
So,
off season, we have 2 or 3.
and on the off season, we have 2, and we bring in a housekeeper. So the answer is it depends on what you're gonna need. And so what we do is before we buy a park, Jason and I are one that set the staffing model. So we take a look at it, we say, this is our best guess on how we're gonna staff it. So when we went to Georgia, because it's newer, we could see right away that the manager that was there before us, she was doing all the cleaning, she was running the kitchen, and she was managing the front desk. How one person is doing all of that is insane. And she was overworked, and that's why she needed to leave and retire. So we recognized right away that we were going to bring in a full-time cleaner. And we put that in the budget and we brought her on early, even though we don't have the demand that's going to keep her steady through the summer yet. Because we have 9 rentable units that require a housekeeper. We have, what is it, 8 public restrooms and 1 large common area that needs to be cleaned. But we're also adding 10 more rentable units, so our turns are gonna increase. So we're gonna end up bringing in another housekeeper, but we staffed up early to get ready for that, so we weren't scrambling when we started getting those on. So you really have to look at what's going on in each one. Whereas at the park in Texas, we can run skeleton crew in the off season. And then our park manager, we sat down with him in January. We said, this is what we're thinking for staffing. We actually cut $30,000 out of our staffing budget in Texas from last year, just based on lessons learned, because we ended up going towards a work camper model to fill in some maybe low skill jobs that we had around the park. And so we offered more of a work camper scenario that saved us $30,000 in staffing. So we still have the same number of staff that we had last year. We just did it more effectively cost wise. So we do have a blend of that at both parks in terms of who we're using work camping and who we're using as full-time staff. So when we do the Texas park, we make sure that all the lifeguards are paid positions, because that's a very important position to have. And you want to have somebody that's serious, they're getting their training, they're certified, and they're paid staff. Anybody that touches cash in our parks is a paid staff member. So that's something that we track and we make sure that we're monitoring that cash flow
And they get background checks.
and they get background checks. Any other questions you have on that, Nico, or did I answer it, or is it? Because I
No,
kind
this
of
is
went
great.
around.
No, this is perfect. Thank you guys so much. I have one
Yeah.
question. You keep saying park manager. Can I liken that to like a property manager, or what is the park manager?
Yeah, so the park manager, what they do is they oversee the day-to-day operations at the park. So they're your boots on the ground. Mostly what they're going to do is they're going to do a lot of your reputation management and manage the check-ins of the guests and then handle the cash that's on property. And then they're also going to manage the team that's there and determine how that team is being utilized. So each one of our managers will set the schedule for how the employees are working, and then they will also do all the interviews and hiring for those employees as well.
Very, very interesting. So then with the leasing, or I guess I don't call it leasing. Like, is that all online booking?
A lot of it is online booking, and a lot of it is still phone calls. So that's why we use the property management software that we use. We're getting more online bookings than we have in the past at the Georgia one. We're watching that trend up. That's what we want to happen.
Well,
Um,
you got to take some credit for some changes you made based on data we saw.
yeah,
So this is another example of how you use data to fix something. So talk about that.
the data I saw where we didn't have any
So we would have
so
people
we were
come in
seeing
and then we'd have
carts
all
being
these abandoned
vacated.
carts.
No, so what happened is we had people that were, well, credit cards were being declined. You can't stop that. People are going to have bad credit. But what we saw is people were abandoning the cart, and we found out that there was too many click-throughs on our checkout process. So we reduced the click-throughs to reduce friction for the guests. So it's another metric that I track in our advertising, is how many people are we reaching in our advertising and how many people are actually checking out.
But the point is when you fix that click through problem, because remember they get so far, get frustrated, call the park, and then they would book that way. But when you fix that click through problem, now they're calling the park less and utilizing the software more, which is what we wanted to start with. So you fix 2 problems with one set of data. One problem is yeah, I got people that aren't booking, and then number 2 is now you've trained them to use the software, which is why you go to a booking software so that your
So,
staff can be focused on what's going on in the park rather than sitting on the phone.
and this is where it becomes important to have a property management system. So just to give you an idea, Nico, of how we get bookings. So one is your online presence with your website and your direct booking through your own website. We also use OTAs, so that's other booking systems. So just to give you an idea, we're on booking.com, The Dirt, HipCamp, RV Life,
Airbnb,
Spot Tonight, Airbnb. So we already have 6
VRBO.
VRBO. So we have about 7 different OTAs that we advertise across. And all of those come integrated into our property management software so we can see how we're performing in each of those things. But that's also another way to get bookings. Airbnb tends to be our largest platform where we get bookings that come in.
And one last question, sorry guys, but
Yeah.
if you're doing like a 6 month term, or at least what do you, I don't know what you call it. Do you have to do like vetting, or do they pay up front for that kind of thing?
So the answer is it depends on what your park rules are. So what we do is we do not take leases because leases mean tenants and tenants mean you have to evict depending on state laws. So we have a 28-day stay policy where nobody can technically book longer than that. And then we technically bill every 30 days. So we bill people every 30 days. Now, good practice is that if you're going to have people stay in your parks for a period of time, that you do a background check. We have not instituted that yet, and we haven't felt a need to because a lot of our people that are long-term are only there for 4 to 6 months at max. So typically, we have in Georgia, they're coming in seasonally, so they're vacationers that come in seasonally, and they're only staying there for about 3, 4 months. And then in Texas, we get contracts with workers in the area that are about 4 to 6 months long, and they're very unstable. So they'll come in and they'll work for a few months, they'll go away, they'll come back. So it's a lot of in and out in the park for that one.
Awesome, thank you, that makes sense.
Yeah, you're welcome. Now, there are other models, and not to say that, but I know that Marco and Darren have that park in Tennessee, and they do annual agreements and do background checks. So each park is different.
Okay.
And that's a great revenue stream. Don't get me wrong. It's just Eric and I prefer the hospitality model and providing experiences and watching people be happy.
I don't
I've
even know if
actually,
I should even say, like, you may not want to background check some of these people.
but I mean, for the most part, we get some really. I've met some really, really cool people that were campers and just
Yes.
making conversation. And don't get me wrong, Eric and I will add one or two of those parks to our portfolio because it's easy money. It's little overhead. It just, but again, now you're dealing with tenants and that's a whole different atmosphere and it's a whole different set of laws. But it's definitely a steady way to make money, especially in these times where housing is scarce and affordable housing is a real topic. So,
Right.
Yeah. It's certainly interesting. I mean, Jason's right. We've met some cool people there, and I'll just share one little story quick about how you just get the most unique people that come through, and you never know what people are going through. But we had one of the guests at our park in Georgia. She literally invented R2D2. She's the reason that there is an R2D2. She created the model, she gave it to the Star Wars, that was a low budget sci-fi film. And at the time she was an artist, and so she came up with this mold and they ran with it and created
the
R2.
funny thing is the mold was based on the McDonald's trash cans
The
from the
McDonald's trash.
70s.
Yeah.
From the 70s. That's what it was based on. That was the mold for
But
R2D2.
Oh my
she
God.
she's but she has Alzheimer's and her health was failing, and our park was the last vacation she was going to take with her husband. Like, that's the cool things we get to experience. And then you also have the other side of it where you get to help people have a second chance in life too. So one of the things we're doing intentionally at Georgia is there's a military group that's nearby in St. Tell me what it is, Jason, because
Kings Bay.
it's Kings Bay. Kings Bay Naval Nuclear Submarine Base, and we're working on partnering with them because they have a second chance program for their military. These mean they're military guys, they've been through a lot, they kind of fell off the wagon, they're working on getting their life back, and they need outdoor experiences and things that they can do as a community. So we're inviting them into our park so that they can do these gatherings and have events where they can uh, get back into nature and do things together that help create that community for them. And then we had one of our best workers that we've ever had at our park. He was amazing. I would wake up in the morning and he would be out cleaning the park. He kept it spectacular. He knew how to run all the grounds in terms of the plants and the vegetation, how to manage it and do weed control. Always working, came into the restaurant if I needed anything construction, he was always there. And then we found out after he had a domestic with his girlfriend that he had a warrant out for his arrest in Florida. Like, you never know what people are going through and what they're going to contribute. Honestly, most people are trying to do good and we haven't had any bad elements. But I would say that the recommended industry practice is if you're going to be long-term having people stay in your park, the responsible thing to do is a background check. It's just our model's transient, so we tend to not have anybody stay long enough to require it.
Got it.
Anyway, this is an example of what your metrics might look at like, and this is what you want to see. Increase, yes, up. No cancellation rates. You want to see that go down and labor go down. So again, it's just about being consistent and getting it in front of yourselves and being held accountable to not just looking at the past, but looking at what the future of your park has ahead of it. So you can do those adjustments and tweaks that you need to do to whether it's your staffing or your advertising. Okay. So while we do look at occupancy, we also look at RevPass, and then start looking at least 14 days in your booking pace. It's your earliest reliable warning system. I would disagree and say that 14 days is too short of a window for us. So we tend to look 30 to 90 days out so that we can capture that because of how long people book in advance.
And the fact that we want to be advertising now for something 90 days out. So as soon as Memorial Day is over, probably 4 weeks before 4th of July, I'm going to do a full court press on 4th of July weekend. And then right after 4th of July, that ad campaign will go dormant. Then I'll pick it back up 4 weeks before Labor Day. So that's what I'm always monitoring. What do my big weekends look like? And then how much advertising do I have to do? Because 4 to 6 weeks out, I'm going to start advertising again. And how does that look?
Yeah. So with that, that's what we had to share and what we've learned as we've been digging into our parks and how we're tracking towards bigger revenue.
Look at that. You did it in less than an hour. Well done.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. Any other questions that you guys have that we can answer while we're on the line before we
Or
close?
any ahas? That's my favorite. When somebody learns something, they went, "Oh man, that's gold." Okay,
right.
either we're incredibly thorough or this is a shy group.
So yeah, I have I'm just kind of curious. I've been curious about it for years. I've never really done anything, obviously. And I made a few offers on one small one in for years. I was trying to get this small 20 unit RV, but it was a long-term RV. So I guess they had year leases in place.
Yeah.
And that's how I was underwriting it. But I still had questions on like how to even underwrite it, and what the expense ratio is going to look like, and what type of property manager do I use? Is it different? And I just had
Yes.
I just didn't really know much. So for a few years, I was talking to first the owner, then then a broker, then it went under contract, then it fell out of contract, then he refied, and now he's under contract again, but way over what I was trying to get it for. So just always curious and looking to grow and learn.
Yeah. Nico, reach out if you ever get into that situation. I'm happy to ping ideas off of you. If you guys
Thanks.
haven't met Nico or followed him, he's an amazing underwriter and does a lot
Thank
in
you.
the multifamily space. So he's a go-giver all the way.
Thank you. And then also, so the guy across the street from us at our 10 unit, he's got a lot of property, and he was in the middle of building I believe it was going to be 87 or so spaces, but it was for mobile homes. So we looked at it with Darren to try to get it under contract for RVs, but I just never, we never really did. I felt like it was just way overpriced, and we had a huge construction budget, so we never did it. And then this was a couple of years ago. Then I just reached out to him again today, this past week, and he's getting older, and he still hasn't sold, and he still hasn't built much. He's only got like 10 mobile homes on it. So I'll pick your guys' brains at some
Yeah.
point coming soon.
Yeah, the mobile home I haven't really dabbled in too much, but I get the concept of it and I have some resources that can help with that kind of underwriting and evaluation. It's interesting. You're going to see that if you get into this space, I'm sure Chrissy and Clint can attest how many parks are overpriced right now still. It's a lot.
Oh, I
It
can imagine.
and it's even worse than what I was seeing in multifamily.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm working on this park where actually we're staying at that's for sale right now, and they want 1.9, and I'm trying every which way to see how they're getting there, and I'm like, what the heck? I mean, they're doing good numbers, but uh, I just yeah.
They're basing it on performa. They usually do. Oh, a problem too is COVID. You know, COVID spiked up the prices of RV parks, and they haven't come down. They don't realize you can't sell on COVID rates anymore. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's gonna have to come down to like, I don't know, she's at 1.9 and I'm 1.6.
I always push it back on them and say, look, we have a math problem to solve. I brought this by a bank, and a bank ain't going to fund this. So what do we do? So we either got to discount it, which it sounds like you don't want, or we got to figure out another way to do this without the bank. What do you recommend? And then have them solve the problem, because it is really just a math problem. Like, I
Yeah.
do not have enough money to service the debt, therefore I can't buy it at this price. Now what?
Yeah, or you do get it and then you're literally making like $200 a month.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 It's
That doesn't work, and risk management, and that's another thing. Risk management says it'll never get funded. Like, a bank will never fund it on the risk alone. You just need one roof leak. You just need one hot water heater to go, one AC unit to pop, and done. You're done.
And we're talking to a lot of the work campers and some of the people that have been coming here for many years, and they're talking
Hmm.
to us about some of the issues here that these needs to be fixed.
Hmm.
This is broken. This has been really old. This has been needing to get fixed for a while, and they haven't done it. We're just like, okay, we're taking a tally of all this stuff. They don't know that we're here to buy it. That we're just
Yeah.
talking to them,
No, and that's the best way to do it. I mean, we walked the park, and that was exactly what happened. Is the people that worked there told me all the things wrong with it, and if they had money, these are the things they would do, and they were right on every single one of them. And
yeah,
that's
so
and that's
it's
the reason why when we underwrite and we get under contract, we walk the park, because Erica wants to make sure that her deferred maintenance matches what the real deferred maintenance is. If it isn't, we have to have a discussion before we close, because either we need to come down in price or something needs to change. Because, especially when that inspection report comes out, because it's not us versus them anymore. It's like, look, we have an
yeah.
inspection report. We had budgeted 100K, and there's 200K in maintenance here. So
Yeah, that's what we were thinking of doing too. If we were to go in a contract and do due diligence in the inspections, we could say, okay, here's this. We're gonna
yeah.
have to take something off.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Erica's done that. Erica goes, well, these 5 things I had already planned for, so we're good. But I did not plan for this at all. This is much bigger than I anticipated. Um, and that's a reason to renegotiate. It's also a reason to renegotiate is when you get it under contract towards the end of the year, and then the new year comes out and they've done their revenue, and their revenue came in less than they had forecasted. That's another discussion. We ended up getting 250K off of a park because the previous year's revenue came in significantly less than they forecasted.
Yeah. I would say to like, even though you find stuff in due diligence, it doesn't mean they're automatically willing to negotiate. Like, we walked away from a deal due to findings and due diligence, and when did we walk away? December,
45 days
October.
in? 45
It
days
was
in?
like November, October last year.
Yeah, but we were 45 days into
Oh yeah, we were
into due
45 days.
diligence.
But they came back and asked me to buy it again. What,
did they?
last month?
Nice.
Yeah.
And I actually
Yeah.
said no, because of how the whole discussion went in the negotiations, because it was a seller finance deal and they were not willing to take ownership for the disrepairs that were going on the property that were bringing down the value. And so I would have been okay if we would have been able to find some way to share that responsibility, but had already had so much deferred revenue that I was already maxing out all the deferred revenue I had put in there already.
Yeah. And
So,
that's
And
what
that-
I'm trying to kind of gauge in the price and all of that because I've been trying to pick through their numbers to even see how I could get the operating cost down, but they're at 56% expense ratio, which I don't think is bad because it is a high
no,
turnover park.
it's not bad.
it's not bad at
Yeah,
all.
so I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm trying everything, even if we manage it, because right now it's pretty turnkey. Um,
Yeah, the owners aren't on location. They're somewhere
yeah,
else. They
I
have
mean,
their campers here, seasonal. It's a 6 month park, and they already have a system in place. Seems pretty well run.
yeah, but I just don't know how I could cut costs. I I don't know, I'm at a loss.
And you,
But that's the thing
and
about cutting expenses. You can only cut expenses so far. There's a floor, but revenue, there's no ceiling. So now you'd have to shift to, okay, now what do I need to add to this park to bring in more revenue? And then what is that going to cost?
Right, and that's what
Now
I
you got a
did. I
whole
was like,
different, now you got a
I
whole
know, I was
different
like,
problem to
okay, we
solve.
could take, they have RVs that they rent out, and I'm like, those need to slowly be phased out to make them park models or something like that because this could handle it. But again, there you go, the cost to bring
well,
that in and
Yeah. So
so
that becomes part of your pro forma and your capex and the money you're going to need to close so that you could I mean what what is our capex for the Georgia Park? 450K for our expansion,
yeah,
plus or
plus
minus,
or
doesn't have to be
minus
exact.
half
Yeah,
million.
yeah.
yeah,
I like the round 500,000.
But
So
it's going to bring some significant revenue, and to the point that even the SBA says, yes, we like what we see.
yeah,
yeah.
Erica, your
I
underwriting's dead on.
yeah, I kind of think that here too. I mean, of course, this would be our first park, but I do see that because they're doing pretty good right now, and there's not a whole lot around here, but and they're in the middle of everything.
yeah. The biggest thing
So,
is still making it bankable, right? Like it has to be able to be, you have to be able to service that debt
right.
in any
But
kind of arrangement that's going to come up.
it's even little things like for charging for early check-in or late checkout. So you don't even have to go in and just raise prices across the board. It's just all the little add-ons you can add, like you sell a s'mores kit when they book their stay or they pay, you know, $20 for for late checkout so they can check out an hour or two later than everybody else.
Yeah, they
So
don't even charge for laundry here. So little things like that that I'm
there you
picking
go.
up on that could do it. I just don't think it's going to budget enough because uh
So So here's what you do is you turn the free laundry into staff laundry and then you hire a laundry company to come in and they do a revenue split. So
yeah,
you don't maintain the washers, you don't maintain the dryers, you don't deal with any of the I tried swiping my card and it didn't work. You go, hey, call these guys.
right. Yep,
I
I've
mean
been picking my brain trying to
just
work the
just,
numbers, but
just
Well,
something to think about.
and just remember too that you're not going to force a deal.
Yeah.
yeah,
I know you guys have been looking for a long time,
yeah.
and you can get a
I know.
little.
I keep thinking like, what are we doing wrong? Why isn't anything working? I just think, like you guys said, everybody's so overpriced and they just don't want to come to reality. So we just keep
Yeah,
moving on until
and I've had discussions with brokers about this, so I'm going to say it, knowing that this is being recorded. Is some of the brokers don't have the real conversation that says, "Hey, based on the numbers, your property isn't worth this," and
yeah,
some do though. There's some great brokers out there. I've had great conversations. I've had great interactions with brokers. Don't get me wrong, but then there are brokers out there that they just take the listing and sit back and wait. And that's all they do. You want to sell
Yeah,
it for 1.9? It's 1.9.
I was really disappointed with that property. I just walked a local property here this week. They came down there, they're going, hey, 3 million, 3 million. Guys, this is like my dream to own this property. It's amazing. It's 31 cabins. It's all bungalows. It's beachside. It's got its own fishing pier. Like it's got pools and a hot tub and a huge guest house. And I'm so excited about it. Thanks, Nico. Have a great night.
Thanks, Nico. Appreciate
Thank you
you.
And
guys. Bye.
he the current owners have no idea what they're doing in the space, and the value of the property is about 1.5 million.
Oh,
And they
yeah. Oh,
and they
see
have
But
a
that?
but but they own 3.2 million in
They
debt.
owe the bank 3.2 million in
Oh
debt.
my gosh.
Yeah, there's your problem.
And the broker just let me dance along for like a month talking back and forth about this property and he knew this and he didn't share that.
Oh my gosh.
That's what I mean. There's good ones out there, and then there's not.
Yeah.
I can tell you a story about one that I gave three different offers. She did not share any of the offers with the seller. She just kept saying, no, the seller said no. Then when the listing finally fell off because she couldn't close, I went direct to the seller and I said, hey, I've submitted three offers to you. I don't know if you saw them, but I'd like to talk to you about how I can structure it. She goes, I never saw an offer from you. So yeah, she never saw an offer. So Eric and I drove out and met him in person.
I mean, there's a story that we've been going through. We had an agent. We were looking at an RV park in Oklahoma,